Okay, hey, I'm Ronnie Gurian. I'm Clio's Chief Operating Officer. I'm very pleased to be here today to introduce our guest speaker, Mark Britton. Mark is consistently rated one of the top, most entertaining and most provocative speakers here at ClioCon. So we're all in for a treat today, I'm sure. Just for a quick introduction, Mark was a practicing lawyer for 11 years before a very successful career as a technology executive and entrepreneur. He held executive vice president roles at Expedia and at Interactive Corporation, overseeing corporate affairs, before starting Avo, the world's largest legal community and services platform. I've known Mark for about 16 years, and it's a particularly honor for me to introduce Mark today because he's the reason I'm actually at Clio. About 5 years ago, Mark and I started chatting, and he introduced me to Jack, and I got to know the Clio team. So for that personal reason, Mark, I've known you for 16 years. I'm glad to introduce you and look forward to your conversation today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ronnie. Well done. And I'll say right back at you, Ronnie, it is so great to have you at Clio. So Ronnie and I overlapped at Expedia. We overlapped at Orbitz. I was on the board at Orbitz. But now at Clio, Ronnie's been a tremendous change agent, and the team you've assembled. So much of what we love about Clio is driven through Ronnie's team. So thank you, Ronnie. Also, thank you to Danielle Giroux. I don't know if Danielle's here. Oh, there she is right up front, who helped me with all these slides because you may or may not know I'm on the Clio board, have been for 6 or 7 years. And that's why my slides look very Clio-esque. But thank you so much for all the work. Danielle helps me out almost every year, and couldn't do it without her. So, all right, we're going to talk about AI. Just so everybody understands up front, this is not getting down into the weeds, talking about how you use the Clio tools or VLEX tools or any other tool. That's probably another AI session. This is to go a bit bigger. I really would like to talk about AI and how I see it moving in the next 5, 10, even 20 years. And I want to talk specifically about how legal is unique and how we might harness it. And I'm going to give you, I had to cut out some slides, so I can't really remember how many examples I'm giving you, something like 7. But we'll go through them together. Okay, so I'm very excited about AI, as all of you know. Ronnie and his team are excited about AI. Danielle's excited about AI. And the good news is many of the lawyers out there, many of you in this room, you're just like, man, all of these tools, they're changing, there's one right there, changing the way that I practice law. But on the other side of the spectrum, you absolutely have lawyers who feel like this, that AI, no good is going to come of it, and it's just going to damage your margins, damage your practice, damage the industry as a whole. Now, I'd love to be a little bit hard on you, but when you look at some of the data, I mean, if you look at global opinions from really tech-savvy countries, all the way from South Korea up to Australia, you have a huge percentage of the population that say that AI makes them nervous. Now, this is from 2023, and this is probably about the time that ChatGPT was really getting in everyone's head. But it's fascinating to me when you look at like the United States and Canada, 63% of people are like, oh, I'm really nervous about this AI. So if you're nervous about AI, you have company. You even have company in the industry of AI. So this is a group of engineers that put together a white paper called AI 2027. And I really encourage you to read it. There's a link down in the bottom, but you can just Google it as well. But they basically say that we will achieve artificial general intelligence. So when machines are as smart or smarter than humans, not 5 years, not 10 years, by 2027. And they raise some red flags. So smart people, concerned, I get it. Also, a commentator, I just loved his book, Sapiens. I think I even talked about it from the Clio stage. I read his book recently, Nexus, where he raises, I really encourage you to read this book if you're interested in AI, but I don't agree with everything he does or says, but he raises some really interesting paradigms as, or commentary about how AI is going to change our social interactions and ultimately humanity. But maybe where I share your concern about AI the most is this photo. So before ChatGPT started throttling, creating images of individual people, which you can still do, you just have to work around it a little bit, I asked it to create a picture of Jack Newton, the founder of Clio, and Mark Britton, the founder of Avvo, in a board meeting together. And this is what we got. They took, Jack has a pretty hip beard, they put that on his head. They gave him glasses, and they decided I look like John Hamm. Who would that's worrying, but I will say, I want to give it credit. A couple of things they got right. In almost every board meeting, I found that Jack color coordinates with me. He wears exactly the same colors I'm wearing, and he sits right next to me. And everything I say, he kind of puts his hands in a steeple and just goes, yeah, that's amazing, Mark, that's amazing. So they got a lot right. So, okay, it's still worrying. I don't think I look like John Hamm, but anyway. If you're concerned about technology, you're not alone, but also let's go back a little bit in history. You had Socrates, who was worried about written language, and he said the alphabet will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls. They will trust the written characters and not remember themselves. Now, if he was talking about social media, yeah, I think I agree. Maybe that's where he was headed. But the alphabet, I think we've done okay with the alphabet in the written world. I think written word. I think it's really helped society. Or the Luddites. The Luddites, now they were self-interested. They were concerned about their own money, their own living. But during the Industrial Revolution, they were a group that went around and damaged, destroyed many of the machines. Here, I think it's a loom, an industrial-sized loom from that time. But the Luddites were certainly concerned. And then if we take it all the way up into the 60s, many people consider JFK one of the greatest presidents of our time. And he said, a revolution of automation finds machines replacing men in the mines and mills of America without replacing their incomes or their training or their needs to pay the family doctor, grocer, and landlord. This was only in the 60s, right? 60 years ago. And yet, I think the mechanization, the automation within America, it's actually been very net positive. And I think some can argue, well, look what's happened to the Rust Belt, look what's happened to Middle America. But I think that's due to exporting jobs, really, rather than any sort of mechanization or automation. So when I look, whether it's Socrates or the Luddites or JFK, we have a lot of people that have put up warning signs about technology in the past, and it's worked out okay. And for me, I think AI is exactly the same. And for me, it's just always about going forward. And when it's for AI specifically, yeah, we're going to make some mistakes. Yes, there will be some blow-ups. But if we don't push forward, and especially as a legal industry, if we don't figure out how to harness it, to incorporate it, to serve our customers, it's going to cause some problems. We might talk a little bit about those problems. Okay, so here's what my whole speech is about. Basically, if legal can do two things, and these are big ifs, these are big gear shifts, man, but this is where I feel that we need to go. So, number one, if we can find delight in developing products for our dissatisfied customers, that's if number one. Now, I know there's a lot in there. I'm going to go into every single word in number one. But if we can, number two, develop a network that better collects and organizes legal's data, another big if, then AI will be our best bet, legal's best bet, lawyer's best bet, to preserve legal's right to shape/regulate itself and push democracy forward. So I could do a whole speech on legal's self-regulation. I won't do it here because I want to get into the product ideas. But we have a very unique position as lawyers that we self-regulate. And also, we have this overlapping or consecutive, very interesting position in that laws, starting from legislation to law enforcement, to judges, to lawyers, we are the cornerstone of our nation's democracy. These are tremendous rights we've been given. but with them come responsibility. And I want to talk about those. So, okay. So if legal can, let's start with number one, delight in developing products for our dissatisfied customers. Let's start with the concept of working backwards. Okay, so customers are beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. So the title of my speech, Working Backwards, this comes from Jeff Bezos, and he said this from the beginning of Amazon's existence. And he said, listen, there might be a lot of people out there that are very upset about different things, but if you can get to the epicenter of why they're dissatisfied, that is where product opportunity lies, okay? And another great quote that kind of associates with this is he said, most companies write the software, or if we apply this to legal, they create the legal services, they get it all working, and then they throw it over the wall to the marketing department saying, here's what we built, go write the press release. That process is the one that's actually backwards. So what he's saying, and I'm just telling you as a legal industry, and when I say legal, capital L legal, I'm talking about the legal industry as a whole, okay? The legal industry, we as lawyers, yes, we're very smart. Judges are smart. Legislators are smart. But we're constantly telling the consumer, this is what you want and need. We do not listen to them, okay? So what we do is we build it, and then we say to them, live within it, as opposed to listening to them, understanding what their dissatisfaction is, and then building products for them. In Amazon, within the company, to this day, before they launch a product, when they're just ideating on it in the beginning, they are required to draft a press release that is a promise to the end user, to the customer, what their product development will deliver to them. That becomes an artifact that the engineers and the product people and everyone that's involved in developing the product and pushing it out, that's that artifact that they reference the entire time and go back and forth and actually work backwards from that and say, okay, this is what we're building, this is our North Star. If you are interested in digging into the concepts of working backwards, I highly recommend this book. It is written by one very good friend of mine and a pretty good friend of mine. On the right is Bill Carr. Bill and I spent a lot of time together. I'm going to Streamsong with him in a month. We do about 3 or 4 guys trips together a year. He ran all of media at Amazon for years and years, and then I met Colin Breyer, who was Jeff Bezos' chief of staff for quite a long time. So these are really smart guys that have been at the deepest levels in Amazon, and they've written a very user-friendly book that talks about the whole Amazon process and how you work backwards for your customer. Okay, so I've given a little bit of this away, but I do think it's easy for a legal conference full of lawyers, paralegals, et cetera, to say, okay, just can you hold on? I get this whole working backwards thing, but sorry, who's legal's customer? And so for purposes of this chat, this is slightly rudimentary, but these are kind of the big players, right? These are all the candidates. And I think when you look at the various AI products that are already being developed, that are really getting most of the conversational share right now. I didn't put this slide together, I took it from somewhere, but it's kind of the bulk of AI products that are top of mind right now. They are very lawyer-centric, and I think it's easy then for lawyers to be like, yeah, we're pretty awesome. When we think about legal, lawyers were the customer, right? Except if any of you have spent time with judges, well, you put a judge and a lawyer in the same room, and the judge is like, excuse me, I think I'm the center of the legal universe. I think democracy is also probably a strong candidate. Some of you might say, oh, you just talked about how we're the cornerstone of democracy. So isn't that what we're aiming for, to whether we serve democracy or not? Yeah, I think that's a strong argument, except I think of democracy as an output. It's whether For me, it's all about whether the citizens, the American citizens who actually founded this democracy, and that all of us, every 4 of these yellow circles, they all serve the citizens, and we can't forget that. And especially, I love this quote that really reinforces it from President Roosevelt, who said, "Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president or senators or congressmen or government officials or lawyers or judges or legislators." I already said legislators. But anyway, they're the voters of this country. And so a big part of this speech is, how do we really work backwards from our customer, that is the US citizens, so that we can push democracy forward? Like I said, big picture stuff, I don't have any good VLEX suggestions. Okay, are our customers dissatisfied? Yeah. Listen, there's so much data, and I think a lot of you have been in bar speeches, and if you've seen me speak in the past, I could do a whole data dump on you from old AVO data or World Justice Project or American Justice Foundation. There's all this data about the low utilization rates of lawyers. But rather than me telling you the data, and since we're talking about AI, I just went to ChatGPT and said, hey, what do American citizens think of lawmakers? Well, Americans distrust politicians because they often see them as self-interested, dishonest, and influenced by money, et cetera, broken promises, partisan gridlock. It all goes down to people feeling that politicians care more about power than people, feeding long-standing cynicism toward government. You go, okay, well, that's a little harsh, but ChatGPT is synthesizing literally millions of documents to get us here. That's what large language models do. That's not just ChatGPT's opinion. So, but I kind of get it. Law enforcement, ChatGPT, Americans often distrust law enforcement because they see it as biased, unaccountable, and overly aggressive, et cetera. Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of distrust there. There's a lot of frustration. Okay, what about judges? Well, ChatGPT really dumped on judges. I can't even read. Many Americans distrust judges because they see the judiciary as political rather than impartial. High-profile Supreme Court decisions often appear driven by ideology, not law, et cetera. If you read all these factors all the way to the bottom, together these factors make the courts appear insulated, biased, and disconnected from the fairness and transparency people expect in a democracy. Okay, we might debate some stuff in there, but I get the dissatisfaction. Lawyers. They made it short and sweet. US citizens dislike lawyers because they're seen as expensive, manipulative, self-serving, and aligned with the powerful rather than as impartial problem solvers. They got to the point. Now, for the lawyers that are in here, I get it. It can be frustrating. But let's just break it down, okay? So it's all about distrust of big L legal, the legal system, the legal industry, the legal profession, whatever you might want to call it. And it breaks down in all those ChatGPT responses and also all sorts of research that I've done in the past. It's about access, okay? They don't feel like they have access to the process. They don't feel like they even understand the process, so can't access that. They find it very inconsistent. They see it as biased, they see it as political, and even the systems, when you have, say, 2 court cases conflicting with each other, that just drives citizens crazy, and it's slow and expensive. That's kind of the breakdown. That's the dissatisfaction. So we can either sit there and just be like, oh my God, these people drive me crazy. I work so hard. I work long hours. I do everything I can to drive the legal profession forward in a really meaningful way, and yet you're still complaining. And I get it. I get both sides there. There's a t-shirt that you can actually buy. This is actually the t-shirt in the cart. And I think it really applies. And it's everything looks like a conspiracy when you don't know how anything works. And yeah, you have all these people that are using the big L legal industry across law enforcement and judges and all of that I just showed you from the ChatGPT. And it has become so big and complex around them that they start developing these conspiracy-like theories of like, oh my God, everybody's getting paid off, and the judges, it's the Star Chamber, and there's just crazy stuff you hear about legal. And yes, you can either grab the base of your nose or you can wear snarky t-shirts, but what I'd really ask you is that you wear this t-shirt. They are beautifully, they are wonderfully dissatisfied, and so let's work backwards to help them. Okay. Oh no. I was ready to work backwards, but we have more work to do? Yeah, unfortunately. And that's number 2. A network that better collects and organizes legal's data. So when I say a network, this is both philosophical and organizational. And let me tell you what I mean. So when we think of a network, we think of all the data that is swirling around in this room right now, swirling around our cities, all of the different devices that are going to the cloud and beyond. We just love it. It has changed our lives. It's certainly changed mine. But the reality is, not all types of data that is swirling around is equal. And when you have different types of data, it really changes the construct of the information flow. And let me explain what I mean. So you have 3 types of data. You have objective data. Objective data is just what science says about the object, right? That's a computer right in front of me. We could have any number of scientists, any number of people go and measure it. We'll always get the same answer coming back. It's a computer. Subjective data is your opinion of the object. You all have your opinions, so whatever. Everybody gets their own opinion. Intersubjective data is where it gets really interesting. So when you have a bunch of subjective beliefs, but a large enough people have them and share them, what happens is those shared opinions start to elevate the object. And in fact, when you go from science to opinion to widely held opinion, as it relates to data, there is more and more wobble in how that data is processed and consumed throughout its life. So I was sitting here trying to think of, okay, what's something that's objectively simple, but really its intersubjectivity elevates it and kind of makes people crazy? I had to think about, what's that? Baseball? That's I'm a Mariners fan. Ouch, ouch, but we're coming back. But how about a baseball cap? This is something that gets people fired up. Not here to talk about politics, but if we overlay the 3 types of data, let's talk about the objectivity. It's a hat, it's cotton, it's dyed red, it has white stitching. We can all agree on that, right? Subjectively, you have your opinion. I like red, I don't like baseball caps, I don't like what it says, I like what it says. Intersubjectivity, however, is where it gets really messy. You get a bunch of people who get together and agree that this thing has an important goal or this thing promotes racism. It gets funky. And we are surrounded in our lives by intersubjectivity where the data, the opinions, really get elevated. We won't even talk about religions, but there are a lot of people fighting over those. We fight over country boundaries. We fight over forms of government and political parties and how much a stock is worth and how much a currency is worth, and even what it means to be a family. A lot of intersubjectivity, but with all of these examples, man, it's messy. It's really messy with a lot of fluctuation in what the definition is and what it all means. Here's what I'm here to tell you, and this is what makes legal so hard and makes it different from, say, medical or accounting. Maybe nowhere in any industry is there more intersubjectivity than legal, okay? From the agreement on the Constitution down to the legislation, to the law enforcement action, to judges agreeing with counsel or and down in the commercial side, the agreements between 2 lawyers or 2 parties, all of our justice system, of our big L legal, is driven by that handshake in the background, that handshake of this is who we are, this is how we're going to work together. It's just an agreement that this is all going to work this way to preserve order in society and drive democracy forward. And because it's all just an agreement, it's not like medicine where there's science behind it, or it's not like accounting where there's math behind it. It's just the agreement. Now, we could have a long discussion about this is all supposed to evolve, right? It's so great that somebody didn't carry the laws down on a tablet and say, this can never change. No, we have an evolving democracy, but because of that, it's a shit show, okay? And we all work within it. Making things even more difficult. There's tons of it, okay? I just put a couple federal stuff all the way from the Constitution down to reporters on the left side and a bunch of Massachusetts stuff on the right side. We have 50 states and we have protectorates and all this other stuff. I mean, there is hundreds of millions of this inner subjectivity, these agreements that are hanging out there that make it really hard for us to go through and process and parse and bring consistency. There's just so much of it. And then here's another kicker. This is another place we are so different as an industry, is that really important data that affects the outputs of Big L Legal is not collected or accessible. So let me walk through these examples really quickly. You know, in court, we're recording more of what goes on in court now as we move to court reporters, and now we're recording, and we have on the record that comes out of Australia. You know, all sorts of conversations are now being captured. Really important data that we can and should process, both index and process. Indexing is just a fancy word for putting into categories so you can find it later. But then when you go in the judge's chambers, none of that's recorded, right? Settlement negotiations, not recorded. I get the public policy around settlement discussions or judges' chambers, but the whole regulatory side, whether it's agencies or legislators, there's a lot of what happens within those regulatory agencies that is not recorded. It is not captured, but major impact on the experience that is Big L Legal. What's discussed, the behind closed door conversations among politicians, or the stuff that happens in law enforcement. Now, we're getting better with body cams and recording a lot of stuff that happens with body cams, but once that report is written and how they're logging their performance and who was arrested and why and all of that, that is very messy. And it leads to some pretty bizarre results. But I'll just say, AI, if we could get all of this captured and digitized, and I know some of you, like, you're lawyers, you're like, issue number 1, issue number 2, issue number 3, issue number 4, and you'd give me 27 issues of why this is a problem. But I'm telling you, over the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, this all needs to be captured, and if we can capture it, AI can process it and deliver, in my estimation, a better experience for our end user in interacting with the legal profession. But because of these things, because of the intersubjectivity, because there's so much of it and we can't even control, like, all those documents out there, some of them aren't even digitized, and we have all of these conversations that are not being captured, it gets a little messy. Now, if you talk to lawyers, you talk to judges, and you say, hey, how's the legal profession going? They're like, oh, well, you know, it's a pretty clean desk. We're doing okay. We have some problems here and there, but for the most part, we have our succulents and sharp pencils, and we get it done. But for your customers, it looks like this, okay? Or maybe rather than the comedic slice of pizza with the tape or whatever it is, maybe it looks like this. So this is President Trump speaking from the White House and saying that crime is going up in DC and that's why he has to bring in the National Guard. This is on NBC and they're showing the exact opposite data in real time. Now, if you're a constituent, if you're a citizen, and you look at this, you're like, WTF? Like, who's telling me the truth? Let's take it maybe out of, well, I guess this is still pretty political. I mean, Biden administration, we getting away from DC and the things that have gone on there and whether we should be deploying the National Guard, for corporations trying to keep up with the rules around non-competes. I don't know if any of you have followed that or do this kind of law, but Under the Biden administration, FTC came out and said, no more non-competes. But then that was immediately challenged in 3 different states, and 1 state said it was okay, and 2 states said that it wasn't okay, and that frees the law, and then there was a bunch of litigation, and then the FTC appealed and gave a, I mean, as a company trying to stay on top of this stuff, you're just like, guys, you have the pizza and the messy desk. I mean, it's just messy. And we need to have a system that is really organizing all of this data, getting it indexed and synthesized so that we can get at it, so that you can have an experience. Like, how many of you in using ChatGPT for the first time and you asked it to build some chart on, I don't know, like what is the cost of private schools in Boston for my children, and how much will it cost me, and blah, blah, blah. You can ask it to do anything. And you'll get this in like 30 seconds. You'll get just incredibly beautiful spreadsheet with a bunch of meaningful information that would have taken you hours upon hours to put together. That was a wow moment for me, right? And yet, there's nothing like that we're doing in legal. And we need to be. That wow moment that you had with ChatGPT, legal with the big L, needs to deliver it. Now, one thing I'm not talking about, and again, I'm going to get into some examples. I'm not talking about a Wizard of Oz, like big supercomputer in the sky that collects all the information and processes it. That'll never happen, okay? We have 50 states, all sorts of different budgets, all sorts of issues around federalism, and just trying to get the federal government to do anything efficiently. It's not going to happen. What I'm talking about, in the contrary, and this is why I say it's both philosophical and operational, is I'm talking about 1,000 points of light, 1,000,000 points of light. Basically, every place in Big L legal, from legislators to law enforcement to judges to attorneys, every place that they are offering information into the system, I would argue it should be recorded, maybe anonymously, but it is recorded, collected, and made available for AI agents to actually collect this information, synthesize it, and give a ChatGPT-like experience to our customers. That's what I'm talking about in this network. And I know a lot of you are like, it's never going to happen. 5, 10, 20 years, if you don't make it happen, somebody's going to get in there and make it happen for you. That could be another business. It could be legislators taking it away from you, the way they did with alternative business systems in London and Australia. It is coming if we don't get our AI act together. Okay, so that's the network. That's number 2. I told you it was big, but now we can work backwards, I think, as long as Rosie the Riveter doesn't show up again. No? Okay, good. So, what are we going to do? If we work backwards, we're going to delight in addressing the dissatisfaction in our customers, and I already broke it down to say that's distrust with access and consistency and speed and expense. All right, now I've come up with a number of ideas. I hope they're as illuminating as this slide promises, but I'm just trying to give you a feel for where I think the industry can and should go. And a great place to start is AI agents. So, AI agents are simply AI augmenting what you already do in your non-computer, in your organic life. So ChatGPT, it's a large language model, but it really sits under the category of AI agent. You have heard of co-pilots. That's where you're doing some writing or something like that, and you have the AI augmenting that. So we're already seeing it, and so it's kind of low-hanging fruit to start there. And a number of my examples have AI agency in it. But I want to start with this idea of what we're already seeing on the corporate side. So whether you want to build a website or an app or a workflow or whatever it might be, it used to be that you would have to have an engineer that helped you out. So today, all of these things, through these different categories, an AI agent, by you just loading the objective and having a conversation with them of what you're trying to do, the AI agent, They can actually build these things on their own with no engineering whatsoever. These products exist today. And in companies, I have a lot of friends in big companies, and they say, especially on the product side, they say, this is amazing. This is game-changing for us, where we don't have to get engineering involved in the first instance. We can actually go out, build these apps. We just tell it, again, no coding experience. Here's the objective, here's the data, have a conversation, refine it, and now they have a fully functioning app that they can deliver to their customers, test it, iterate on it, and then if the thing blows up, they can take it to engineering, build more that way. This is revolutionary, and we should be doing this in legal. Medical is doing it. So you have AI that is synthesizing compounds, not just for Stanford. This is only one example. But they are mapping genomes of viruses and bacteria, and then they're running through just data, digital scenarios of how they might attack, in this instance, antibiotic resistance bacteria. And Stanford's AI agent is called SynthMol, and they have developed a drug that goes after this resistant bacteria. Chemists, researchers, doctors, in other articles, not this article, have said that it has saved them decades in their ability to run through permutations of synthesization to get them to the place where they can deliver new drugs. AI is changing medicine at light speed. We should be using this type of stuff in legal. Okay, let's get to the examples. Let's start right at the top, drafting laws, okay? Now, these are kind of busy slides, and I'll just be totally honest. It's because I don't want to remember every single thing that's on these slides. So it's kind of my notes plus telling you a story. So thank you for letting me cheat. But legislative drafting. So here's my proposed product. There we go. So the possible design is that lawmakers would load objectives into an AI agent. They would load in all of their underlying data, as opposed to, I just want this law. Like, you need data, right? There would be the first draft of the legislation by a machine, and then very similar to these AI agents I showed you in corporate, there would be prompts or there would be conversations for revisions. That will give us real-time legislative history. It'll incorporate all the conversations to where, how did we differ? What is the road? What are the little crumbs that take us from the original objectives to the proposed legislation? It can also be interrogated. So citizens or the press or other lawmakers could say, hey, tell me what's going on with this thing. Tell me about its history. Tell me how it's working. How does it differ from the final objectives? Does it have any potential bias? Like, where's the pork in this thing? Who's benefiting? How, and this is really important, how does it conflict with other laws or regulations? Probably be good to know that up front, because we're constantly passing regulations that end up running into each other. Let's have more efficiency. Let's have AI run all the permutations. And then especially when there's new law coming out, when you read about it in your, whatever your news app is, your newspaper, what have you, the first question that always comes to mind for me is, how does this affect me? But imagine if you could just ask the legislative AI agent, hey, you have all the background, you have all these conversations, you have the original objectives and data, how does this affect me? This is doable today. We just have to have the culture, the philosophy, and the operational fortitude to get this stuff into place. And if we work backwards, if we say, okay, does this serve citizens? Well, from an access standpoint, citizens have a better understanding of the process and the legislation itself. The machine is highlighting the inconsistencies up front, the conflicts, the special interests. I mentioned pork, log rolling, whatever you want to call, where one politician is scratching the other politician's back. That's going to get us to better consistency. Speed, you're going to have faster, better legislation, including between the House and Senate at the federal level or even at the state level. And then for cost, just for us as taxpayers, you're going to have fewer rewrites, fewer amendments, fewer challenges. Transparency and those breadcrumbs really just drives all of from a working backward standpoint, all of the elements that are to the dissatisfaction of the taxpayers, of the American citizen. Okay, let's go to the next one. It's kind of similar, but let's go to judges. Okay, so imagine if we could have an AI agent where a judge in any decision, so this is a decision when he's back in his chambers and working with clerks and paralegals, or there is a judge, she is sitting on the bench and actually dealing with a motion right in front of her, whether documents have been submitted or a motion from a lawyer in the middle of a trial. Imagine if they could load the objectives, and oftentimes, if you're recording this, the AI is probably in front of you in understanding what the objection is and what the court's objective should be. But let's go back, we'll just talk about it in the chambers, the first draft being by the machine, and it would be based on the objectives that the judge's chambers gave it, all the briefs, all the case law, and the record, and hopefully those recorded conversations I talked about. Now, there's some danger in here. Those of you that have spent a lot of time in the judicial world, you know, our judges are not fact finders and don't look at themselves as fact finders, very different than other countries. But I'm not talking about them going out and discovering new information. It is all the conversations that happened in the court. It's all the conversations that happened in the recorded conversations. Could you pull that in to inform the decision? We're all pretty stressed out by hallucinations. That is a place where you could have the clerks and paralegals still checking for hallucinations. But I'm here to tell you there'll be an AI agent that sits on top of this that is also checking for hallucinations. So you have your drafting AI agent, and there's a hallucination AI agent. In companies today, where a lot of their development, their early development is being done by co-pilots, you will have different modules of AI agents that are drafting the code, and you'll have an AI agent already today in place in companies that is overseeing and making sure that the code that they're writing is seamless and hangs together. We'll see the same thing in legal. You can have a conflicts check. Again, pretty important for judges, especially when they're making a ruling, an immediate ruling from the bench. Does it have federal federal versus state, or are there already contrary decisions in the state or across state lines? I have had judges say to me, what would be totally cool is sometimes on these motions, they'll give me hundreds of pages. And I've got to make a fairly quick decision on this. I'm dumping it on my chambers, on my clerks and my paralegals. But if I could just have the AI synthesize that for me and come back and say, show me every mention of a red light. It's just one example because they're focused, I don't know, it's a car accident, it's personal injury, and they're really trying to understand how people talked about that person running the red light. Imagine if you could have that level of synthesis to where it goes through all the documents and in real time lists for the judge every time there was a mention of a red light. You could add every relevant and associated case weighted and summarized. And then once this brief comes out, just like the judicial decision comes out, it can be interrogated by the lawyers and the parties for the rationale and the conflicts and the bias. So if we work backwards, are we solving? Our touchstone is that citizen. Are we solving it for the citizens? Absolutely. Parties and lawyers can converse with the decision, giving access. Consistency. The machine highlights the inconsistencies. You have a faster judicial process, fewer appeals, fewer challenges, and less chasing. So let me just talk about chasing. I don't know how many of you are litigators, but regularly in litigation, I was just shocked. I started as a corporate attorney, but have been involved in a lot of corporate litigation and sadly personal litigation. And it is amazing to me the number of times that judges make mistakes, or opposing counsel offers a point of view, or associates a case law with the situation where it's just not true, it's not right, it's a mistake, and the whole legal team has to scramble to chase this down to get the right law in front of the judge or to correct the judge or whatever it may be. Having an AI tool up front like this is going to lead to less of that chasing, which can really run up the bill from a general counsel's perspective. Okay, and then lawyers. So we're already seeing this in a lot of products. I spent a lot of time with the company ClearBrief. I think many of you may know ClearBrief. I'm an investor in it. It's a great piece of software. But they're helping you while you're writing a legal brief. They're sitting there being your co-pilot. But let's go just a little bit broader. Let's go maybe 5 years out, maybe 10 years out. What if you could load your objectives for the contract, the brief, what have you? You could start with your own forms or maybe pull from a menu of best provisions. Now let me just step off on that for a second. We could do a whole 30 minutes, 60 minutes on this. I have asked for forever. I have many friends who spend time counseling in the legal space, working with Supreme Courts, et cetera. A dream I have that we have is that there is a best provisions concept out there for lawyers. So all the different law firms, you all have your own forms, and all of the wording for some of the simplest boilerplate, it's just different. And that leads to a bunch of expense because you, in your own mind as a lawyer, you're trying to synthesize it and understand how they're different. What if we had within individual states, or maybe a more macro level to where even some group, let's say all 50 states, could agree that certain indemnification provisions or liquidated damages provisions or certain things you say in briefs, if you could just pull that down and plug it in, and it's marked as this thing that has been blessed by an accord or is coming from the best provisions database, then it will just cut down a lot of review and conflict, which leads to expense. So I'm just stepping off, but let's say that you could load objectives, it pulls in a bunch of best provisions, whether that is something that your state and state regulators, Supreme Court has agreed on, or maybe AI is the mechanism, is the catalyst for actually building this to where they're able to look at so many millions of contracts or briefs or whatever the legal document is, and how successful those have been, how often they've been overturned, how they're massaged, et cetera. What if AI could say, no, this is your menu of the best provisions that have the highest likelihood of success? That would be really cool. Machine spits out a first draft based on all those things the judges relied on, your objectives, the forms, maybe best provisions, the case law, the record, and recorded conversations. It does a conflicts check. It could give you the probability that the provision would be accepted by a specific judge. How cool would that be, right? If we can get into the data, I talked about all those 1,000 points of light. If we could get into the data that we can see how judges are ruling on individual motions and individual briefs, you could actually have a ChatGPT-like experience where it comes back and where it says, this judge, she does not like these types of provisions. She has thrown them out repeatedly. I'd kind of like to know that when I'm writing a brief, when I'm proposing some sort of settlement. You could also have the software flag where you could refine. I mean, this is what ClearBrief does today. It flags where you could refine or where it's untrue related to the case law or the record, where it might be unenforceable, where maybe the parties have already negotiated this, so just put in what we negotiated. AI can do all of this. And any provision could be interrogated by customers, opposing counsel, judge, et cetera. This might be a little frightening for counsel, but imagine a judge who's dealing with a contract dispute being able to interrogate the AI and ask a lot of questions. I think that it's a different kind of law, it's a different kind of role for the judge, but maybe it's the one we need to bring more efficiency and more satisfaction for our citizens. And I know as lawyers in here, a lot of you are like, oh boy, I see so many issues. Of course. But we're talking about 5, 10, 20 years of how we develop this to have a more streamlined process for citizen satisfaction. Access, the parties, the lawyers, judges, all that transparency, it gives us a better understanding of the documents. The machine's highlighting the inconsistency. You get faster everything, the drafting, the negotiating, and remembering. I don't know how many of you drafted contracts and like 2 years later, you're going through the contract and you're like, I don't remember why we put this provision in here. I know you, if you're a commercial lawyer, I lived through that. Or some partner put it in and he's like, you figure it out. So the remembering part, that all can be handled through the AI agent. That gets us in the drafting to fewer revisions, fewer negotiations, fewer explanations to your customers, to the judges, fewer challenges based on the law, and fewer dead bodies. Again, going back to my legal career, we would deal with these massive, maybe they're merger documents, whatever they are, and we would get to the point where we would kind of lose control of the document. There were so many iterations, and yeah, we would distill it into something great, but it was always this panic when you said, okay, you signed off on it or you filed it with the regulator. There was always this panic of like, oh God, I hope there are no dead bodies in there. Or there's stuff in there that you just agreed to disagree to get the deal done, and you're like, please don't let that come back to haunt me. Or when somebody, I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but litigation pops up on a contract that you've worked on, and you're like, please don't let it be me. Please don't let it be me. I've lived all those. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about access, and this is going to push more towards consumers, and then I'm going to come back with the last couple of examples for lawyers. But on the access side, imagine if we, as citizens, could actually use AI agents to propose legislation. So the possible design is we load objectives in any data that we have, and the first draft comes back from the machine, and it'll prompt you again for it'll prompt you or have a conversation with you about revisions. It can tell you, it can do the conflicts check. It can tell you possibly where you're being biased or certain people are being injured. You know, what you're proposing here, you know, kills half of Myanmar. Let's not do that. It might tell you what is, based on all the legislative history and law that's out there, what is the likelihood of this passing? And so the AI agent, then, whether it submits it yourself or you choose to submit it, it goes to the legislature for tallying or synthesizing, and meaning that they actually say, hey, this is a pretty good idea. Let's put these two ideas together, and they incorporate it in. I just think this overall would facilitate a deeper consideration of submissions from citizens. I mean, any of you have submitted something to your legislators? I mean, it's a horrible experience. It's like, oh, thank you so much. And they check a box, and that's the end of your conversation. Then you get a machine-signed letter from the congressman, what have you. I think you're going to have deeper consideration. You're going to have better responses from legislators and their offices. So from the working backwards standpoint, more citizens are a bigger part of the process. The laws are more consistent with constituents' desires. And I mean, from a speed standpoint, I don't care if you're lawyers. Try drafting a provision today if you don't live in the legislative world. I mean, personally, for me, it would take like a week for me to bring in all the information and case law and to really understand if there was anything that I could do that would be helpful to legislators. I might have a goal, but like, can I do anything with it? And then cost, much lower barriers of entry to get citizens in there and being part of their process. Okay, DIY documents. Now, I will tell you, this is where I get into some of the stuff that just makes lawyers pull their hair out, and there's a lot of fear because you think it's going to take business away from you or at least erode your margins. But when we talk about DIY, it's already happening, right? I mean, LegalZoom does like they're right around, I think, $400 million in revenue. So they're taking quite a big bite out of your paycheck already. And then you think of all the foreign companies and all the people who aren't even using lawyers. I mean, DIY is already happening. The question is, can we get them into the big L legal system? So what we could do is we let them load objectives, and maybe this starts with your forms, the lawyer's forms. Maybe this is a widget that you have on your site. Think TurboTax or LegalZoom. You say, hey, if you are really looking to do a simple will, well, here are the forms, and on every one of these forms, it has your little logo or watermark. Well, maybe you don't want to do that from a liability standpoint, but there's at least a brand impression there. Maybe it can pull from the best forms or best provisions. AI is probably going to do that without you if you don't figure out how to do it for them. First draft by the machine, and then the AI can coach them on anything that seems a little bit difficult. As they have that conversation or there are prompts, and the person says, well, I did want a simple will, but the problem is I have this handicapped son, and so this is a little bit different. And AI can help them through those issues. And if it does get too complicated, well, then it refers to a lawyer, possibly the lawyer who gave them the form. And again, and by the way, doing this, so it'll also do that conflicts check, which all of this, the conflict checking would just be such a massive gift to our profession. Now, some of you might think, no, because I clean up a lot of these conflicts. Yeah, you do, but is that really what we're trying to drive from a bigger picture as far as satisfaction goes within the legal industry? And in other speeches you possibly have seen me give, it's all about getting really to the apex of art in law, that where we can be delivering the highest point of value for our customers, and cleaning up their DIY stuff, I'm not sure that that's it. So, working backwards. More people can use legal documents and processes. I mean, again, just keep in mind, people are not using legal documents and processes. Overwhelming supermajority of people are just avoiding legal altogether. Those conflict checks will bring consistency. You don't have to hire a lawyer. You don't have to wait for revisions. You're doing this through an automated system that works with you on your time. There's a lower cost of entry, but higher utilization of the legal industry. And as you understand the magic of these contracts and how they help you, more of those people will come and hire you. I couldn't be a bigger believer, and this is how we handle a lot of this entry level that isn't touching legal at all right now. Okay, last one on access. AI small claims court. At kind of the lowest income levels, you have people that have legitimate claims, but they can't get in front of a neutral party, a judge, an arbitrator, whatever it might be, to help them resolve their issue. But maybe, and I really do think this will be built. You have somebody who is going to file a complaint. They load their objectives into the AI agent, any evidence that they have. The AI interviews them, understands more of their complaint, and actually puts together a small claims complaint. That asynchronously, meaning it gets passed over now to the other side. Yes, we have service of process and all of that in the middle. But they put together a response, the AI agent, they work with them just like you're working with ChatGPT to get the response in place. And then you have an AI judge in the middle. This judge engine will synthesize both submissions. They'll look at all the overlapping case law or associated case law. And it will also ask questions. This can be asynchronous of both parties. Now, one of the beauties of small claims, I better hustle. I have 2 minutes. Let me just move on a little bit, and I'll say that I just think if you have ever done small claims, and I've done it a couple of times, it's really hard because you waste so much time waiting for your turn to come up, and then it kind of feels like the judge is doing a lot of this off the cuff. I think an AI judge renders a decision that is going to be more sound, and anything that is unsound can be appealed. But for me, you have more people who can have disputes resolved by a neutral, sophisticated party. The consistency is that the AI judge is working from a deep pool of case law, and no one is waiting for hours. And from a cost standpoint, it's asynchronous. It's when the parties are available. It could be done from home, work, or what have you. Okay, I'm going to keep you just maybe 3 minutes after. We're going to go into speed and cost. Both of these relate to lawyers. But they do get us back to serving citizens. And really, a lot of it gets us back to cost savings for you, where a percentage of that you're going to share with your customers. Okay, AI indexing and workflows, we're seeing this already. A lot of people are trying to do it. I think we're only 5 years out. So just think about, like today on an iPhone, rather than looking around for your apps, you just swipe down, put in the search bar what you're looking for, and there it is, okay? Your entire law firm, your entire relationship with the court, your entire data universe could and should be indexed by an AI agent, but particularly within your firm. And the bigger firm you are, the more important it becomes. But where you just swipe down and you tell it for the type of document that you're looking for, no matter where it is, as long as it's in digital form, AI has already found it and indexed it. How awesome would that be? But the challenge is a lot of this data is in different apps. But just as we talked about in corporations, them building workflows, imagine all the different apps you use to run your practice. If the AI could also find them, index all the data in them, but also index the functionality so that it can lace together all of your workflows, no matter which app you are using. That is coming. So, a lot of you are spending a lot of money on consultants who are telling you to try to wire this stuff together with gum and paper clips. AI is going to do it for you. It's going to propose workflows, and it's going to refine your workflows. And you're like, well, okay, does this really help citizens? Absolutely. It's easier for your customers to get the information that they need when they're asking you for documents, what have you. You can even index some of this to be client accessible. And so you don't even have to get involved. Your consistency will be much higher across matters because you won't have to recreate the wheel. You can find the documents, and I realize that some lawyers in big law firms can be like, no, these are my forms. Well, stop doing that. Let's have the AI find the forms so that the whole firm doesn't have to recreate it to the expense of the citizen, of the customer. But so much higher consistency across matters and the lawyer and the firm and even your apps. Faster information discovery, visualization, document preparation, that's all good. It all drives cost. All that efficiency drives lower cost. And like I said, a lot of you, it's going to allow you to have lower expenses, and some of that you can give back to your customers. I don't care if that's 10% or 90%, but you can share some of that with your customer and deliver your legal services at a lower price point. Okay, here's the final kicker. I think on all of this, a lot of you are like, man, I just worry about this taking work away from us. I mean, I'm still adding a lot of value, but there's a lot of busy time I bill right now. As an industry with AI coming online, we have to move to project billing. We have to. Accountants are doing it, hospitals are doing it, like everybody's doing it. Bankers, they've been doing it for 20 years. Hey, look at the value we added, we're awesome, here's your bill. $15 million. Project billing. The product should look like this. We just say, we are adding value at this rate, okay? So imagine you get kind of a complex case. I'm not talking a very simple, maybe that introductory will. I'm talking about a very complicated case. Maybe it's personal injury. The AI models the time and materials in the background based on your firm history, how you've handled matters like this in the past, or what competitors are charging, or maybe what even the AI kind of senses that the matter might entail. And they come up and they say, yeah, this is probably what we'd charge on time and materials, but we're going to give you a fixed price with margin built in. They can also, expense is really important, but just as important is understanding the value of the matter, maybe for contingency fee, what kind of rate are we, what kind of settlement to judgment do we expect in this? But even in fixed fee, maybe you're charging for something that a form they can take today, but they're going to get tremendous value out of it tomorrow, and you can take up the price a bit on that because of the additional value that you're delivering to them. And then really valuable for both settlement and arbitration and knowing what the value is for wherever you are in the case. And one of the things it can do is flag when your time and materials is exceeding budget, just like builders do. I love, builders, they come in and they say, no, it's this price. But once things get weird and you've made a bunch of specific requests, they come to you and say, hey, all these requests are kind of driving up the price. Well, this is how we should be billing our customers and having those conversations. I'll just very quickly hit, it all works on the working backwards side. Just gets rid of this whole fear of lawyers being too expensive. We fix the scope, we fix the fees. It's better it's for everyone, it's faster, drives better cost. So I'll close with two things. I know these are really big shifts, but working backwards by developing these products that focus on our citizens' dissatisfaction, getting our information, all this swirling information in legal digitized, that is our shot at building amazing AI products as Big L Legal, as an industry, so that we drive our profession and democracy forward. And so I'll finish from this quote from Jeff Bezos, because I started with Jeff Bezos. We're at the beginning of a golden age of AI. And why don't we just add in legal after that? Recent advancements have already led to invention in legal that previously lived in the realm of science fiction. And we've only scratched the surface of what's possible in legal. Believe Jeff Bezos, believe me, it's coming. Let's Big L Legal get to business and build AI for our customers. Thank you.